right. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. We had a closed session that went a little bit over. Lots of topics in the city of Royal Oak we're discussing. I'm going to call to order the Monday, July 8th, 2024 Royal Oak City Commission meeting to order. We're going to begin with an invocation given by me, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I ask that you stand if you can, please. We celebrated our independence from a king dictator this past week. We celebrated with fireworks, barbecues, hot dogs, hamburgers, and apple pies. I wonder what our founders would think about our country today. Would they relish in all that we have achieved? Would they wince at the state of our politics, fueled by ignorance and apathy? It's taken nearly 250 years to get where we're at today, and much progress has been made, to say the least. But there is always more to do if we are to survive as a nation. We must be forward-looking and ever vigilant in our pursuit of a more perfect union. What took 2.5 centuries can easily be dismantled in 2.5 seconds. And while our Constitution serves as a sturdy framework for our democracy, each of us and all of us must be truthful, make sacrifices, and respect others, especially with those who we do not agree with. May our City Commission, our staff, and fellow citizens exhibit the respect and honesty worthy of the greatest nation to ever exist. We pray for the safe return home of all those who serve our city and our country, both in uniform and not. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have a couple of exciting announcements and introductions tonight. I'm going to hand it over to our city manager to kick off the introductions for tonight.
I think first I'd like to introduce our new assistant fire chief. I think it's on, let's see. No, it is now. Mike Gladio is here. He missed last time. He had something to do, very important, to take care of a car for his daughter. But you want to say a few words? You're welcome to. I know most of the folks will know you from your years in the department.
Oh, sure. I'm very, very much looking forward to working with you as a Well, if many of you know me, I've been here for 26 years. I've enjoyed working in this great city that we are in today. I look forward to working with the commission and the citizens, make this a very successful and well-educated fire department. Thank you for your time.
That's good. Thank you, and glad to have you.
Mike, it really is a pleasure to see you in this position. For those of you who don't know Mike, I was actually shocked he didn't jump up to have a lot of words. But he is always going the extra mile for the benefit of this community, puts on programs, does a lot of things that our kids enjoy. You may have been smoked out in a trailer with him from time to time, but he really takes not only his job seriously and professionally, I think we can all attest that he goes above and beyond in all of his capacities to really do an amazing job, and he reflects very well on the fire department. And when we got this news, we were very excited to see it. So, Mike, congratulations, but you know, we're the ones that should be congratulated having you fall into this position. So.
Next, I would also like to introduce our new Chief Financial Officer, Kimberly Coy. Comes to us from Oakland County, where she worked in the budget department and actually is one of the deputies and ran all of their grant programs. Very impressive. She has both an MPA program, MPA degree from Wayne State University, and an undergraduate from Wayne State. We will have her officially next week, starting on Monday, and you also have your chance to say something.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Kimberly Coy. As Mark said, I spent the last 10 years of my career mostly in county government. The majority's been at Washtenaw County in various finance roles. And then the last few years have been at Oakland County, working with budget and grants. And I'm really looking forward to coming on board and working with you all.
Wonderful.
I would just say, to add to it, she was very impressive, not just on paper, but in the interviews that we conducted with her. And she had as many questions for us as we had for her.
Ms. Coy, welcome. We're so grateful to have you on board. And I know if you could, I know working with the chairman of our board in Oakland County, if you can work with him quite well, I'm pretty sure you're going to work with us quite well. So glad to have you on board, and we'll try not to drive you too nuts, but hey, you know, the finance director is always playing cleanup. So we're grateful that you're here and look forward to all the great work you're going to do.
Likewise. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, that brings us to item 5, which is the approval of the agenda. Commissioner Macy. We have a motion by Commissioner Macy. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Douglas. Discussion on the agenda. All right, with none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. All right, that brings us to item 6, public comment. Just a few quick notes here before we start public comment. The City Commission values and relies upon the input of our fellow citizens to help make decisions. Now is the time set aside for the public to address the City Commission on any city-related issue, whether or not it's on the agenda. I ask that comments be directed to the Commission as a whole and not to individual commissioners. If you wish to speak tonight at public comment, please wait until recognized by me, the mayor, then come up to the podium. For the record, we'll have you state your name and address. Please be mindful the City Commission wishes to hear from anyone who wants to speak tonight, so comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker, not per topic. And we have a timer up at the podium to help you keep track of your time. If you don't wish to speak tonight, no problem. You can always reach out to us via email, or if you see us in the street, make sure you say hi and bring your issue to our attention then. Please note that the City Commission will not respond directly to questions during public comment. However, we are taking notes, and when that topic is discussed, we will ask those questions. And if your question or comment isn't related to anything on the agenda tonight, our city staff is taking notes and does follow up, but we need your contact information to get back with you. So we have the amazing community engagement specialist, Judy Davids, over there, and she will be happy to take your name and information, and when we have an answer for you, we'll get back to you. So with that, who wishes to speak tonight? Mr. Gomez.
Good evening. George Gomez, 2018 Guthrie Avenue in Royal Oak. When the City Commission announced reviewing the master plan a few years ago and then provided charrettes to do so, it helped me to better understand what plan you had for the future city of Royal Oak. Your plan does have its supporters, by the way, builders, developers, and attorneys, even one such as a past mayor. Donations by such individuals to your campaign, to me, isn't a way to buy your approval, but to thank you for letting them be part of your plan for oversized developments, reduced parking, and the removal of trees or landscaping. Such changes will make them greater amounts of money now and in the future. They are some of the wolves in sheep's clothing in this city. As mentioned at a previous commission meeting, for the approval on Rochester Road, a commissioner mentioned the possible 45 tenants that want to come into this desirable community. And all it requires of you is to ignore the 300 residents already living here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, who's next? We'll go with Mr. Karlowski in the back.
Rick Karlowski, 419 Virginia. A couple of comments here with regards to the rental agreement or second reading. A couple of things here I don't understand is why you took out the requirement for a inspection of the house or building prior to offering a rental agreement into this with the city. I think that's craziness. There's nothing in there about having a rental or having somebody preventing a guy from renting it to, again, renting it to a third party. Why is this important to me? Because I was across the street from where this happened. We had a rental. He rented it to somebody who basically turned it into an Airbnb. They had a party, and when they got bored, decided to pull out a 9mm and cap off a few rounds. There's nothing in here that prevents that. With regards to the penalties, I think we need to have some semblance of severity in here. Right now, it's just like after the first one, after the second one, the third one. For example, I don't, $200 if the lawn isn't cut, that's one thing. $200 for the first offense if some guy turns it into a drug house or or sub-rets it again, and we have one of these fun fests that we had across from my house. That's a little bit different. Severity should be there for the kind of event it is. And let's see, last thing in here is, if I don't get a license, what's the penalty? There's nothing in here. Well, it's almost catch me if you can, and then maybe $200. If I was renting it out, I wouldn't tell you anything. Let it go. See if you can catch me. Then I'll pay the $200 and we'll get on from there. There's got to be something in here. If you don't follow the rules, you're out. And there's nothing in here for that. The second thing is the request for ARPA funds for Arts, Beats, and Eats. First and foremost, ARPA funds, in my humble opinion, should never go to this event. This is a DDA event. If they want to fund this, that's up to them. My street was supposed to be paved the last road millage. It still isn't paved, and it doesn't look like it's going to be paved for certainly this year. So we got things to do in this town that we can spend $100,000 on. That doesn't include the Arts, Beats, and Eats. Secondly, I will give a lot of chutzpah for him asking for $37,500 as a booth fee so that our restaurants can have a booth at his event. He comes into our town, makes a ton of money, and has the audacity to come into this for tax money to pay for a booth fee so our restaurants can have a booth at his event. That should be in the contract right now that all restaurants in Royal Oak get a booth here, period. He's making a ton of money here, and for this one to come up here is the height of chutzpah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Krolowski. All right. Yes, sir.
John Stoya from North End Tavern. Nice to see a few familiar faces. So I'm coming to ask for at least consideration on the ARPA funds for Arts, Beats, and Eats. I can't say I know all the ins and outs, so I can only speak so much in it. But our experience for Arts, Beats, and Eats is it was actually our worst sales last year by a significant amount. We opened just a few weeks before, and we saw quite a bit of decline because significant traffic and plenty of people attending the event, which was great. This year we thought we'd be part of it, or think if we were contemplating being a part of it, but financially it is a little bit difficult between staffing the equipment and running two places at once, and ultimately it just puts us in a tough spot. So depending how the funds are used, we think it would be a great opportunity to help support some of the local businesses that would also, or that are really getting hurt by the event, and hopefully get them involved and show Royal Oak's, put Royal Oak's best foot forward and allow them to be a part of the event. Yeah, the support from the city would be invaluable. We're new to the city and to the event, so we're learning, but again, any support here would be huge. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Stoya. Yes, in the back.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Teresa Mullen, and I own the Fern here in Royal Oak, 406 East 4th Street. The Fern was fortunate enough to be a vendor again at this past weekend's Royal Oak Taco Fest. What a successful weekend that the city had, with so much diversity, so much community, and I like to say probably the best tacos that weekend. I will personally say that our sales were off the charts for small business. This is really important to us. It helps us, put some nest money aside during winter months where we're a little bit slower. Last fall, I came to the City Commission meeting to thank them for the supporting for the ARPA funding and I'm now asking the city to continue it one more time. The help for us, a small woman-owned business, we have our struggles, and I don't want to share or complain about that. I just want to say that they're there, and the funding would be a big lift for us. Since I have the podium for a moment, if you haven't been to the Fern, we are a teen coffee shop. We serve sugar-free green teas. I actually made them for my father, who's a type 1 diabetic, and they're perfect for these festivals. We plan to participate in this year's Arts, Beats, and Eats, which is why I'm asking you for ARPA funding. These serve as a refreshing beverage for kids and families to enjoy, and we hope that we can get the city support just one more time for us. It means the world. Thank you so much for your time, and hopefully we get that ARPA funding. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Harrison.
Thank you. Bill Harrison, 2729 Trafford, Royal Oak. I'm at my wit's end with, agenda item 8, okay? I'm at my wit's end, pun intended. ARPA funds should not be used for promotional activities. They should be used for necessary improvements that are not affordable using tax revenue, such as restoring the street lighting on Main and Washington downtown, tearing down the old Center Street parking structure and replacing it with surface parking. The DDA has a very competent downtown manager that is responsible for promotional activities downtown, and he has a budget to support the activities. We do not need to publicly fund an independent, for-profit company to provide promotional events for the downtown. WITS does not own property or pay property taxes in Royal Oak while using the downtown park and streets for his profit-making business enterprise. The DDA gave WITS $20,000 for the Taco Fest. He then charged $10 per person entrance fee in addition to the vendor fees. The benefit to downtown businesses is questionable. Neither the city or DDA have provided compensation to the brick and mortar destination businesses for attracting customers to downtown while suffering lost revenue of up to 40% for 3 years due to the MPS parking system. WITS is also going to have a retail village in the Centennial Park, which will directly compete with the brick and mortar businesses. And then these 18 retail sheds that he's going to put up will be in the park for other times to be announced. So he will be using the park in direct competition with existing retail businesses. Thank you.
Yes, in the back corner. Yep.
Good evening. My name is Vanessa Ibrahim, and my husband and I own Princess Mediterranean Grill at 30875 Woodward Avenue. I'm here today asking for the City Commission to approve ARPA funding for Arts, Beats, and Eats. We are not in downtown Royal Oak, and not only do we feel the positive impact of Arts, Beats, and Eats, but I can also share that the other big event in Royal Oak, which is the Woodward Dream Cruise, which is at our doorstep, doesn't have a positive impact for us. In fact, during the Woodward Dream Cruise, our sales are actually a bit down. Literally, the cars and the customers are zooming past us and not coming in for any shawarma sandwiches or bowls. When we did Arts, Beats, and Eats last year, we received the ARPA funding subsidy. It was a breath of fresh air for us. It was a huge help. The support we got helped with labor and high food costs, and the experience of the festival was really an incredible one for us. We will be back this year at Arts, Beats, and Eats regardless of your decision here today. But I just wanted to share that the effects of COVID are still out there, just in different ways. Okay. While it was a major loss of sales back in 2020, the new issue we have is the cost of product and labor. Some of our product has tripled, and our labor is just such a difficult thing to find good help and to maintain. Your funding for us today really gives us a chance at a big win, and we hope you continue to support the funding for Royal Oak small businesses that participate in the event. It's a huge impact for small businesses. Thank you for your considering the support once again this year, and I really do thank you for your time.
Thank you. We'll go here in the red. I don't know. Yeah. I'll go with red, sorry. I feel like orange, pink, red. It's a great color. I like it. Looks very good on you.
Thank you. Carolyn Martz, north end of town. You mentioned ignorance and apathy in your invocation, Mayor. I feel that the residents, this is regarding 4704 Rochester Road, the old bank. It's going to be a 42-unit apartment complex. All we received was dismissiveness and apathy. And I have it hard to believe, for the 3 meetings that we had, I mentioned traffic every single meeting. I can't believe that the 2 young commissioners had no questions about that. They addressed parking with a report, and they even had the sunset report, but 0 on traffic. Adding 60 to 80 cars to that small intersection, not very wise, as I've said. I feel, you guys aren't going to like this, this is a politically incestual city. Mayors going on appointed commissions or representing developers, projects that always go through. It's like musical chairs between the commissions, the boards, from coming off this commission. That one meeting that we were at, I believe it was May 13th, Mayor, when you stated we're the government, we can do what we want. I texted that clip to you. You wrote me back that it was, your tone and context was taken, was taken out of tone and context. I was a court reporter for a long time. When you're on the record, there is no tone or context. It's the record. Again, we have 2 brand new commissioners. They look to you for tutelage, direction. With that statement being said, I feel that's what you did, just saying yes to that project. On the second reading, you looked around, you said, anybody have anything to say? I think we discussed it last time. It went through. Oops, sorry about that. I know the ideology of this town, the road diets, the pack 'em and stack 'em developments. In the end, it'll fail, because corruption is coming to the end, and God wins. So, hope that comes true before this. Oh, and last thing, the police might want to think about renting one of those 600 square foot units for a little mini police substation with all I can envision traffic accidents, incidents, whatever happening. Thank you.
All right. Who's next? We'll go with the sir in the hat right here in the gray t-shirt. Is it taupe? Man, I can't get my colors right tonight.
Hello. My name's Travis. I'm the general manager of Condado Tacos on 310 South Main Street. I just want to say that the Taco Fest brought in a lot of foot traffic, and I want to say thank you for having that. We saw lots of guests come through and even stop in afterwards, and they were very excited, and I've seen a lot of happy faces come through after the Taco Fest. I think it was an amazing turnout. So we really want to participate in the Arts, Beats, and Eats. But with the cost of everything going up, labor, food, I don't know if you guys know about chicken costs, but the cost of chicken is pretty high right now. We would really appreciate the American Rescue Plan funding. It would be great for us and our staff to help promote our business and get us an opportunity to get a vendor inside of the Arts, Beats, and Eats, and that's something we'd love to do. This would be our first year, and we look forward to future years. But yeah, we'd appreciate it if that went through. That's it.
Thank you. All right. We'll go in the plaid here in the front.
Hi, how are you? I'm Jordan Smolsky. I'm the owner of iFreeze Creamery, 310 West 4th Street, downtown Royal Oak. We make all our ice cream fresh right in front of you, liquid nitrogen. We use premium ingredients, so no corn syrup, egg yolks, any preservatives, anything like that. But last year, we opened in October. I was introduced to John over there at RPM in the summertime, and he introduced us about Arts Beats and Eats. And then I always attended Arts Beats and Eats for many years, and then I always dreamed about, as a store owner, actually doing Arts Beats and Eats. And then we were always contemplating actually doing Arts Beats and Eats. And then when John introduced us with the ACT, the grants, we finally had opportunity to go over and discuss everything with my sister, and then the grants gave us the opportunity to finally go ahead and do Arts Beats and Eats. So that provided us with a good financial freedom to do that, and then without that, we probably wouldn't do Arts Beats and Eats. And then when we went and did that, it went very successful for us, and then we had a great opportunity. So this year, and with many other vendors too, that would get very, positive outcome with all that too. That's all that. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Mario Cutraro, 415 South Washington, Trattoria Luigi. Speaking here today on behalf of my father, who would like to be here, but he's exploring the mountains of Peru, seeing Machu Picchu. Yes, very high up. Yeah. No, I'm speaking in support of the ARPA funding. We've been in business here since '98 with Sangria. Now we have Luigi's since 2012. I think I've worked every Arts Beats and Eats festival since the Pontiac days. I see what it brings to the city. It's no question our biggest weekend, hands down. We're kind of coming off the heels of COVID. Things are starting to normalize a little bit. And like the gentleman mentioned earlier, now we're starting to seeing these food costs skyrocket. We got our broccoli so high, we're giving people green beans at this point. We were asking support for the ARPA funding because Arts Beats and Eats comes in. That's where we get a lot of fresh faces. I'd say 50% of our regulars, their first time at our restaurant is during Arts Beats and Eats. We're gonna continue to, we participate every festival. We have a booth out there. We open our doors. We're just, can't speak more proudly of Arts Beats and Eats. It's also the weekend that all of our staff, all of our regulars, if a regular usually comes with 2 people, they're so proud of the city for Arts Beats and Eats to bring in 6 people. And yeah, just really that breathing room that's created through Arts Beats and Eats carries us through the slow fall months into the winter, into the holiday, our busy season. And yeah, I'm in support of the ARPA funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Mario. We'll go in the back in the maroon t-shirt.
Hi, my name is Sakib Islam, and I'm owner of Nurjahan Indian Cuisine, Royal Oaks, 617 South Washington Avenue. So I'm here on behalf of my restaurant, Nurjahan. We are on the south end of the downtown on Washington Street, and we don't have a based food traffic, and appreciate your consideration of approving the American Recovery Act funding for Royal Oak restaurants that have a booth in Arts Beats and Eats. We are doing okay, but we think having a booth and showcasing our tasty Indian food at the festival would be great for business, knowing the funding would help lower our fees. I wanted to share that the help would be appreciated, as we have a lot of cost in preparation for the booth. Having a good representation of Royal Oak businesses at the festival would be good thing. So thank you if you can vote yes, and on this help to our restaurant and owners. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Wagman.
Good evening, James Wagman. Regarding the ARPA funds, I was able to find the latest report on our expenditures and what the balance is that we have available. And from what I can find, we have a little over $1 million is all that's left out of the 28 that isn't committed. That doesn't count for, I'm concerned about the 1.5 million that the DDA owns, or was supposed to pay towards the enterprise parking fund, which they have not committed to, which would probably have to come out of ARPA or our general fund. We've got cost overruns that we've identified so far of the animal shelter of $800,000. The bathroom at Farmers Market is $250,000, and I don't know how many of the other projects may run over, but the general fund doesn't have it. So I'm wondering what we're going to eliminate from the ARPA expenditures proposals, or if you're going to try and take it out of the general fund, because we don't have it. We're supposed to cut, having attended the budget meetings, we're supposed to be cutting $3 million out of that, or we're going to be in big trouble and have to ask for another millage. So spending more money out of the ARPA funds, I think we need to consider that and figure out what we're going to eliminate and what it's going to cost. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Hi, my name is Nicole de la Mora, and my mom and I have recently started sharing a space with Cafe Muse on 418 South Washington Avenue. We are a uniquely themed Mexican restaurant called Café de Olla. We just opened on March 15th, so we haven't been open that long yet. We serve items like fish tacos, enchiladas, pioneros, and tortilla soup. And unlike some of the other restaurants and businesses that have come up today to speak, we cannot participate in the Arts, Beats, and Eats unless we have support from the city with the American Rescue Act funding. The Arts, Beats, and Eats would be a new experience for us, being a new business, and we are very much looking forward to it because having participated as just a consumer of the Arts, Beats, and Eats, it's always very fun. So I think the new experience for us would be very beneficial in terms of also bringing in new customers and getting the word out that we're open. And I promise that not only you will help us very small business and a very big family of 6 that we are, but we will also treat the city and all of the guests of the Arts, Beats, and Eats to some very good Mexican food. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right. Anybody else wish to speak tonight? Going once, going twice. All right, we're going to close public comment and bring the meeting back to this side of the table. Thank you for everyone for coming out tonight and sharing your thoughts, and especially the business owners that have so much on their plates. That's one pun. I guess that's an accidental pun. No. To come out and express your thoughts and talk a little bit about your businesses. I think actually I've been to almost every single one of the businesses that have been here, and they all do an excellent job. And there's a couple I got to go to, a new one in particular. I'll be there. But yeah, so appreciate everyone coming out tonight. That brings us to item 7, which is the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to pull anything off the consent agenda this evening? Commissioner Cheatham.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to pull the consent of the previous minutes off of tonight's consent agenda. Is queued up now for next week or next meeting in order to address an issue.
Okay, item A. All right.
Yes, thank you.
So the consent agenda now consists of everything except for item A. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as modified? We have a motion by Commissioner Douglas. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Herzog. All right. All those, we have a motion on the table. Any discussion? All right. With none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. 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 Those opposed? Motion passes. All right. And item A, just Commissioner Cheatham, we're just going to bring back to the next meeting after a few clarifications are made. Okay, perfect. I don't think that's an issue at all. Okay. Yes.
So we pulled it from the agenda to do what?
So just, there is some glitches, I think, with the software that caused some errors that need to be addressed before the next.
So we postponed it till the next?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't quite hear that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sorry. I was get this thing more lined up well, and you can hear all my jokes. All right. Okay. So we're good there till next week, or I'm sorry, next meeting. Okay. All right. That brings us to item 8, our first agenda item, which is a request for American Rescue Plan Act funds for Arts Beats and Eats dining promotion initiatives. Mr. Wallenweber.
Yes, this is a request from the sponsor. You have the item in front of you. I believe John is here. I see him here, even with his tan from the weekend from Taco Fest. And I think he has a presentation that he wanted to put up. Are we able to do that?
Yeah, if he's willing and we're able to.
Thank you, City Manager Wallenweber, appreciate it. And, since I just have a shot at the podium here for a second, I do want to at least factually respond to our approach with Royal Oak businesses, because I think it's fair to share that, and it should be known when making a request of this nature. First of all, anybody in the downtown gets 30% off automatically by being a downtown Royal Oak business. We have had many throughout the years before ARPA, during ARPA, and will be after ARPA. We give them an advantage over other restaurants that come in from outside, and it should be known by the commission that that is, factually the case. I will also share that the festival has a $3 million fixed budget, and we don't come anywhere near close to getting there with the fees we take in for sponsorship, restaurants, and vendors, and there's a very high bit of risk there. We would love to have it be for free, but we are not a typical street festival event. This has become the largest 4-day festival in the state and one of the top ones in the Midwest. And, fortunately, it's been, there's folks that have mentioned, the positive impact. So I just want to share that the local businesses have an advantage. The ARPA funding had created an additional advantage, which has, impacted participation to a higher level, where prior to ARPA, we might have had 8 restaurants. Now we're in the 12 range. This year, we could have 14 to 15. And so we appreciate the consideration. Also, none of this money is going to us. It is all going back to the restaurant. So it's not, our name is on it, but it's directly to the already discounted fees for restaurants. So with that, being said, I will continue, and I will also say one thing about Taco Fest, another event that is not a typical event. It is an $800,000 program. Security is high, tenting is high, support staff is high, music, entertainment. So these events require some vendor fees and support, and it's another event that we're well below budget before we start. So I appreciate it. It was an amazing weekend this past weekend, and the city was abuzz in the best way. And I hope some of you got to experience that. So on to the specific funding. There's 4 projects, and I will just say the first one is the traditional ARPA funding that we've brought to the commission in the past. In doing that and having discussions with Mayor Fournier, there was interest in potentially extending the impact of ARPA beyond Arts, Beats, and Eats. And there were some great ideas that have been cooking that involve a lot of collaboration. And I'll get to them individually. One is a back-to-school students eat free, which benefits both residents and local businesses. The other is a pink drink campaign for both alcoholic, non-alcoholic beverages, and a major support and statement for Breast Cancer Awareness Month in October. And the other is a strolling dinner, which could be a pilot program for something that I think the DDA absolutely should and could take over in the future. So without further ado, Arts, Beats, and Eats, we'll keep it quick. Funding will support booth fees for now 17 local spaces and catering. The value to Royal Oak restaurants would be $37,500 in booth fee savings. The projected revenue to those restaurants participating would be more than $250,000. Funding would also support kids' inflatable activities for free, which was suggested by Commissioner Colo when we first brought this in, and that was changed. And in the history, there's been an approximate average savings of $40,000 for families from the cost of those inflatables due to just covering the cost of the inflatables. That money goes to an African-American owned business in Royal Oak, Inflatable Playscapes, located near the Meyer complex. So that's where the funding goes, directly to restaurants and directly to a Royal Oak business that provides entertainment. And who benefits in addition to those restaurants? The people that come out. Families get to enjoy that for free. The total investment is $55,000, and that is the extent of my presentation on the Arts, Beats, and Eats. It is something that has been well supported in the past and has had positive impact, and I'm happy that restaurants have spoken, some have spoken on behalf of it. So the second program that's $55,000 of the funding that's being requested. The second program, and I will just start with collaboration. The idea of collaborating families, Royal Oak schools, the Royal Oak Restaurant Association. So in this partnership with Royal Oak schools, the dates would be, we're targeting September 9th through 15th. Students 18 and under through schools would get a free kids meal voucher, and that would be good with the purchase of an adult meal. If there were 2 kids, one parent, a single parent, would qualify to get the 2 kids' meals for free. The restaurants would be reimbursed from the program at $5 a meal. It'd be available during the week all day, a day and evening rather, and lunch only on the weekends. And the restaurants would make special menus with 3 to 5 options with a $12 value. So again, the investment, the city, the funding would be getting a deal. They'd be leveraging a discount. The families would get 2 free meals. We would be connecting local residents to downtown businesses, and the Restaurant Association has already spoken. 9 folks have spoke positively in favor of it. 0 have spoke against it, and we know we could get together and work out the final details of it, but that's the nature of the program. Of the budget, $20,000 would be for meal reimbursement, 4,000 meals at $5 per child or student projected, $7,500 for program management, $2,500 for vouchers, website, marketing, redemption. The management would be with Stephanie McIntyre's firm, and I'll be introducing Stephanie in a second. She'll be speaking to the last item that we have on the, on what's proposed, and the total investment would be $30,000. Any voucher that isn't redeemed would be returned to the city at 100%. And again, I spoke to what I think the benefits were there. Local families in Royal Oak benefit. They get connected to restaurants, they benefit, and it comes in September. So now we have late August, September, and here comes October. So the concept here, which is only a $15,000 investment from the funds, is the Royal Oak Pink Drink Campaign. My handwriting, my deck is too small, so I'm going to the screen for this one. Restaurants would offer unique pink drinks to both adults and kids. Non-alcoholic beverages might be pink lemonade, a grapefruit juice. $1 from every drink would go to the American Cancer Society, and $2 per alcoholic beverage would go to the American Cancer Society. Staff at bars and restaurants would be wearing pink throughout the month. Celebrity guest bartenders, survivors would be there telling stories. There would be a great social media campaign with this. And of the budget and we're expecting to raise between $30,000 and $50,000 for this. And when we talk about collaboration, we've met with the senior team at the Royal Oak Restaurant Association, as well as Michael Pessendorfer from the Royal Oak Chamber of Commerce, the president, and he brought the idea to the Restaurant Association. There was huge excitement, and this small budget, I think, would raise a significant amount of money, probably create in the 600,000 impression range from an advertising standpoint, and I think have the city abuzz in the most positive way, supporting breast cancer funding for research and advocacy for survivors. So that is number 2. And before I bring up Stephanie, just want to say a few words. She is a former downtown manager at the DDA, for those who may not know her. She then worked for our company for 9 years and was the most impressive candidate at managing events that I've ever had the privilege of working with. She then started her own business and has been, the Royal Oak Restaurant Association has employed Stephanie to manage Royal Oak Restaurant Week and the Royal Oak Wine Stroll. Stephanie was asked by local businesses, you know, how they could create more events like that versus, you know, alcohol-themed strolls. And the concept that Stephanie's going to bring hits that right on the mark. And again, Stephanie would be co-managing on the last 3 projects, and this one is her baby. So I'm going to let her share it, Stephanie. You may. Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. Thank you, John, for those nice words. This promotion is something that came about based on feedback from restaurants that are talking about, as John mentioned, having less of the alcohol-based crawls and more of that dining crowd. It was specifically mentioned that Wine Stroll brings in an older crowd of people that like to come back for dinner. And so how can we kind of duplicate these efforts and bring these people back into town? And then also coupled with business being slower during the week, so on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, so coming up with something that's going to draw people into town also at a slower time of the week. So the concept is that there would be 4 different restaurants participating in this pilot program that hopefully next year would evolve into a 5 or 6 week program. And so you would start at one location and get your appetizer, move on somewhere else for your main course, then for dessert, and then somewhere for a nightcap drink at another restaurant. Talking about doing it in the middle of the week so that, you know, like we said, these restaurants are already busy on the Thursdays, Fridays, Saturday night, and so what can we do to help them get some more business in those other times of the week? See. Oh, just different, we would stagger the start times so that there could be different, you know, people running through. Obviously, restaurants have capacity issues. So yeah, the goal would be to run this successful one this summer and then launch a bigger initiative next summer as well.
Thanks. I would just add that this is a this is a test program. I know that there's been a mention about DDA getting involved in programs like this. The DDA, as has been mentioned, has sponsored the Holiday Village. And again, I just have to do some fact checking here. The Royal Oak Holiday Village is not going to be competing with local businesses. It is actually inviting them all to have booths. And there was a huge turnout at our first meeting for those businesses to participate, and they're being offered free booths. So I just want to, you know, reiterate that in addition to the funding, but the investment of the DDA on that is high. Parking support is high. The DDA has taken the lead on the rink. So part of this is to ensure that ARPA funding gets spent, and this was a good way. And we were challenged by the mayor to, you know, figure out how to extend these, how to extend the support that that ARPA funding has done for Arts Beats and Eats restaurants, you know, into the rest of the year. And this collaboration has emerged, you know, from that at a very low cost. When you talk about a program like this, that could end up, you know, involving 20 restaurants in 2025. And I will take any questions. And just one comment about the Fern, who is still here. And they came to us when they hadn't even yet opened and asked for a space. And we gave the space to them at 10% of what we would do for anyone else. We don't let businesses sell beverages, and we allowed them to sell beverages. We want to see local businesses be successful. They crushed it the first year, and we moved them to one of our top intersections. They are doing very well when our events come in, and they are a lift. They have mentioned that. And I just want to say, we want to work with anyone in a fair and reasonable way. We want to lift up Royal Oak business. The ideas we are bringing here today are collaborative.
They involve the chamber, they involve the restaurant association, and they involve conversations and feedback, which has all happened in a short period of time. So I'm available for questions and appreciate, allowing to have the time to present today.
Questions for Mr. Witz? Commissioner Macy.
Just a quick question about the strolling dinner. So the other events has sort of a breakdown of where the money's going, but the strolling dinner just says the 50,000, and I'm wondering, like, is that promotional or is that?
15,000. 8,000 is for marketing and 7,000 is for the management of it. 100% of the revenue from ticket sales, it'll have a ticket price. 100% of the ticket price goes to the restaurant. So we would take, let's say the meal was $50, the entree, let's say the entree was at Luigi's, 22 goes there, the appetizer might be 10, would be Lily's, the Oak City might do the salad, or Fifth Avenue does a nightcap. Those would be divided evenly and fairly. And then if one year it was that way, then next year, if Lily's was the appetizer, they'd be the dinner. So it would rotate. And then the idea would be to hopefully next year put 20 of those together. And the cost would not go up for the DDA because you are marketing. It's one marketing campaign. Well, maybe it would go up a little bit, but you would have a major marketing campaign and website and the management of it. Again, the efficiencies would come with that. But I know that this would be the last, chance at running this pilot program through ARPA. So.
That sounds good. So what do you have an estimate, or maybe Stephanie has an estimate on the cost of the strolling dinner? Like if I buy a ticket, do you have an idea?
We're gonna be shooting for between $50 and $65 a ticket. After we're gonna talk with the restaurants and see what they're comfortable with and where kind of the different courses shake out at which location will help with that.
I would also say we want to, just with some of the events being now more to the east side of Main Street, we were looking at targeting the west side. That's why I mentioned the Oak City and the Lily's and the Fifth and Luigi's, just as a trial.
Commissioner Hunt.
I hate to jump around from programs here, but going to the back to school program. So I just want to make sure I'm clear. So it's expected that there will be a value of about $12 for the kids' meal.
Correct.
Out of the $20,000, the restaurant would be reimbursed $5?
The restaurant, we're projecting 4,000 meals at $5.
Okay.
So that's where the 20,000 comes from. So the family, there would be a nice value for the family in getting a $12 free meal, and the funding would cover essentially the cost to promote the business, and they would get the parents' meals or any other friends, or if it was a larger family, those would not be included because it would be per 2 kids free meals for 1 parent or 2 parents, and then the rest. So the restaurant would have an opportunity to make more money than $5 with drinks, gratuity. Does that help?
It does. So that's $7, about $7, because the $12 is like an estimate. But that $7, the restaurant wouldn't necessarily be losing out on $7. Is that?
Well, it's not that they're losing out. It's targeted to cover their cost and a little above cost. So it is not. It's targeted to make sure the restaurant gets introduced to a family, gets the business of siblings or the parents as business to the restaurant, has the cost covered on the program through ARPA, so they get a marketing benefit, and then the value to the kids and families is a $12 value, but the ARPA funding's only having to cover $5. Did I get there? I might not have still.
No, it's fine. I got it. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Herzog.
For the back to school, so the student will get a voucher through the school?
Yes.
And we think that there's 4,000 students in, is it K through 12?
K through 12, yes. I don't have the exact amount, and I should have gotten that from Ms. Fitzpatrick, and that was an approximate number. What I can assure the city is that we would only only have covered what's used. So if it was whatever number it is or was, it would be.
And you've talked to the restaurant association. They're happy with this
program.
Yes.
Because I know that there's a lot of PTA groups that go to restaurants to raise funds for their PTA, so I don't want that to be in competition. And then for the Arts Beats and Eats, sorry, I have a few questions.
No, go.
How do you choose which restaurants will get this be selected? How do you select the restaurants? Because you can do 17.
Yeah, so it really could be any. If we had space for 22, we would just divide up the funding so it's a little less per. So we're not choosing one over the other. We're applying it fairly between all the participating restaurants. So we're not stuck at any number. If it was 12, the number of would be higher. And, you know, at the current number, it's in the $2,000 to $2,500 range. A restaurant that has a larger operation, you know, might get $2,500, and then a place that only serves ice cream might get $2,000. A beverage operation might get $1,000, again, because they have other advantages. So we try and divide it fairly based on all the circumstances that are out there, but it does not stop anyone, and we would not, unless we felt that they weren't able to, you know, to manage an operation of that nature.
Okay. And then the final question is for the Royal Oak Strolling Dinner. You mentioned that this is like a pilot for the DDA. Is the DDA willing to put in funding for this, or are they putting in funding?
I'll take that only because I have talked to several DDA board members. They like all three of the programs that are proposed, including the Strolling Dinner. Several had said that they would support it, and the idea that you know, city leadership at the time that I had the conversation was open to, with all that's been on their plate this year, supporting this as a pilot program, that there was strong interest in continuing them, again, based on how well they did. That's an opportunity to see how they all work and what is exactly needed.
Commissioner Teasdale?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think I'd like to go back to Commissioner Herzog's earlier question because I didn't fully understand the selection and the funding for the stands. So do you have a fixed number of booths that you will have at Arts Beats and Eats, or is that number kind of flexible depending upon the interest of restaurants?
So we're in a kind of a tough time zone being this close to the festival. So we have a set number of booths that we currently have on hold for Royal Oak restaurants, which were in a cover letter to the city manager. I believe it's 14 that we have that are on hold, and that represents all the Royal Oak businesses that have reached out to us, and we've reached out to them. So everybody who is a Royal Oak business that's expressed interest and that we've reached out to are all accounted for in the spreadsheet. And I actually have that spreadsheet here if you'd like to look at it.
No, that's okay. I think my follow-up question would be just diving in a little bit deeper to how you would select them. It sounded like you gave some examples of like by what they offer would influence how much funding they would get through this grant. But I also wonder, would there be any consideration of, you know, a new restaurant, a smaller business, you know?
So those are covered in a different way. A smaller business or a business that doesn't have as good location has a smaller starting point as it is. So for example, a restaurant that might be on Main Street or has a bigger space would start with a higher restaurant. So outside the city, restaurants will pay between $6,000 and $8,000 for those spaces. A Royal Oak business would pay between $4,000 and $6,000, and then with the ARPA funding, it goes down to $2,000. So the discount is there. It's based on what the location is. Yes, if it's a smaller business, they would start at a lower threshold, and it depends on, again, how prime their location was. So there are a few restaurants that spoke today. I could probably give a specific example of one if you...
Well, can you just clarify what you mean by lower threshold? Is that like the lower amount that they're going to pay?
Yes,
or
a lower starting point of what, you know, a location is, so, and what their size is. So a 20 by 20 space on Washington could be $8,000. A 10 by 10 could be $5,500. And then we would drop 30% off that for being a downtown Royal Oak business, and then we would take the ARPA funding off of that. So the funding could go down to as low as $1,500 or $2,000. You got it.
Any other questions for Mr. Witz or Ms. McIntyre? All right, thank you, Mr. Witz.
Thank you.
All right. Any questions for staff? Okay, whoa, this was quick. We'll go with Commissioner Douglas. That was a tie, and I'm going to go with seniority here. She's been at the table longer. Commissioner Douglas.
Yes, I'd like to ask Mr. Wallenweber in his cover memo, he talks about, and I realize that we're waiting for a more recent quarterly report, but still you speak generally about existing projects having been allocated, potential concerns that there are, not surprisingly in these days, things costing more than original projections. Could you tell us a little bit more about those circumstances or what you look forward to seeing in the quarterly report?
Yeah, I think, do this right. Okay, once Kim is on board and Tony's freed up along with this is audit time or year-end time as well as upcoming audit, we'll have a chance to take a look at where we are on some of these. And I would suggest maybe it's the next quarter, certainly by year-end, meaning calendar year-end, we'll know better as to which items have been bid out and how much more we have to allocate to those. But there was, in terms of total dollars, I think goes back to an April meeting of the commission when they looked at those and where estimates were applied as to where we were at that point. That hasn't had the opportunity or the time for it to be updated. We'll be doing that once Kim is, I think, on board. This is an important item. Certainly there is sufficient funds if the commission were to approve each of these items that could be covered. And the way the ARPA money really has been allocated in order to comply with the federal rules, but that displaces funds in projects that we would have paid for generally. So where those numbers are, I hope that isn't too confusing, but where those numbers are is what we have to spend some time in the finance department taking a look at. But there are sufficient funds to do this, and there are some projects that haven't started yet as well. So that we have allocated funds for. So we'll have a better handle on that sometime in the near future. And then certainly you should probably revisit at the end of the calendar year to see, okay, now which of those that we haven't started, are we still going to, or how much do we have to increase our estimates on those based on just costs of doing business going up or materials or things like that. Because there are several of these that are construction projects.
Right. So we have to expend the ARPA funds by the end of
2026, I believe.
2026, okay. All right, thank you.
No problem.
Commissioner Macy.
So it's pretty much the same question, but I'll do a little follow-up on that because and I think you basically answered this now, but I was going to ask, so you note here some things that we are going to have overages on, like we know there's some pull in that direction, and I just wondered if we already were aware of some pull in the other direction. And the example I would give is that the library was awarded a grant for the installation of solar on our roof just recently. And that's part of what we have ARPA funds allocated for. And so it seems like, it's not $100,000, but it seems like I know of at least one, and I just wondered if you did, or it sounds like maybe you're waiting to hear.
Yeah, there are some, that's about the only one that there may be some additional funding through the congressional sources that we've made the next step on at the Salter Center, for example, but that's for it to be a sustainability center potentially, but of course in the budget that just started, we didn't fix the roof yet. So we need to look at fixing the roof before we put solar panels and solar storage on those. So that's one, and certainly if we were to use this facility as a sustainability location for power outages and things like that, we don't have a generator big enough to run things here. So that'd be another issue that we need to take a look at. That's not even on the list. So there are a few of those. I think you hit the only one that I can remember that went the other way, that we were saving because of the grant. And Jill is working on, in our office, is working on a list of where we are, what we've applied for in terms of all grants. So that would help me understand where, if any, we have matching requirements or where we have to put on, or what our timetable for bidding them out would be as well. So.
And I would say it's also fair to say that we have some of the ARPA funding earmarked for certain things that you said haven't been started, we haven't got information on, or that may not be used. I go back to the early, before ARPA funding came in, we had community block grant funding to help address COVID needs, like remember the hotel vouchers and things like that, and we allocated everything, and then we reassessed it and said, well, no one's really taking the housing vouchers, can we use that for food drives? And so it's you earmark it, you plan it, and as time goes on, sometimes you spend more. In one case, we spend less. In other cases, you can't ultimately spend it because it just, whatever you're working on just isn't, the demand isn't there, or, you know, priorities change. And so it's sort of an evolving creature, I think. And I think just to add too, this isn't free money to the city. There's a lot of strings attached where there has to be a specific use case. They're very, the government's been very articulate about how and where you can spend the money. And it's not just to fulfill every wish list in the city. So when we talk about the purpose of ARPA, it's to really help communities bounce back from COVID. I mean, that was the intent of the legislation. And as we heard from a lot of business owners here tonight, you know, one of the long-term consequences of COVID has been this inflationary market and the cost of labor market and the availability of labor market. In the last 4 years, unprecedented low unemployment, wages, which is great if you're an employee. If you're an employer, it makes it hard to do things to keep your business flowing. And so when we talk about these type of investments here, whether it's the back to school or the dinner stroll, these aren't only just one-time things to help people. They actually could be a blueprint that we could carry on in perpetuity. And we had a discussion, and I can't speak for the new commissioners what your opinion is, but we kind of had the general idea that any of the ARPA funding should not be spent for things that would be for continuing obligations. So you wouldn't hire a staff member out of ARPA because it's going to be expired like in 2026. And where's your money to keep that person employed? So you put it into things that are one-time expenditures or things that, you know, like this. You know, you can experiment and see, do these things work, and also provide a tangible benefit in the moment as well. So, sorry, I got to talking there. I pulled a, if Jim Ellison, if you're listening, I pulled a Jim Ellison there, given the whole historical context. See, heads nodding, but I don't know if that was because you're falling asleep to what I was saying, or if you're kind of like, yeah, what he says resonates. Commissioner
Well, I did have a question, but it was answered by your response to Commissioner Douglas's question. But just to be clear, understanding that there are programs or projects that have been tapped for use for the ARPA funds to be used by with, and they have not started, understanding that costs are going up. Is there any danger of those not occurring because of funding that we would be using here?
With again, what limited information I had of where we are, 3 months ago, or in the March 31st update, it was over $1 million that was available. And that, you know, we know that there's actually, you know, there's an overage at the restrooms. There's maybe one in the lead, replacing lead service lines, from what we understand, but we need to get a better handle on those. But there are sufficient funds. There's no program that I'm aware of that we're commissioned to grant these funds that we would not be able to do, but we'll have a better handle on that, as we get people on board and they get a chance to look and tell us where each of these projects are, as well as the timeline when we're going to bid them out and stuff too.
And I think if my math is correct, the 115,000 on the 28 million of ARPA is like 0.4%. I'm not saying it's a rounding error, but given the impact of hundreds of thousands of dollars to local businesses, hundreds of thousands of dollars of positive impressions for the city of Royal Oak, I think the Drink Pink thing is going to be huge from a local media frenzy to prop our image up for everybody. Businesses all over Royal Oak. I think it's I'm not saying we got to always manage the margin of error, but in the big context of things, when we're using a chainsaw, this is scalpel grade. Commissioner Herzog?
Yes. I think I have maybe more of a comment than a question, but well, first I guess my question is, because I'm so new, is there a process for people to propose projects for this ARPA funding if there's $1 million left? How do projects come before?
I think, I'm not sure if there has been, but I know that previously the commission, and maybe Susan's coming up to she may know historically what's occurred.
Thank you for the question, Commissioner. So as I recall in the past, the bulk of what you're seeing on the ARPA allocations were projects that are city projects. So staff did some brainstorming, put these together as things that we could pursue. There was some additional funding provided and allocated for a potential YMCA project. So that was a chunk that was there. But that was a chunk that we were all kind of exploring and interested in, so it was an opportunity. The grant funding, so we provided some funding for nonprofits. That was a process where we had an application, there was a set period of time that nonprofits could apply, and they were specifically allocated funding. Where this one kind of falls in, I think, is under our tourism, hospitality, and there's another word in there too. And so this part of ARPA has not traditionally had an application process or any kind of call for proposals or anything like that. What has fallen under that section of where it all lays out in the spreadsheet is there's a small amount that went for PPE for the library, and then other opportunities where we funded Arts Beats and Eats in the past. So I don't know if that totally answers your question.
Yeah. Good. And then my comment is just that I think these are great projects or programs, but I think that should be more buy-in from the DDA and Restaurant Association, these to show that they value them as well. It's not just the city saying that, we're going to give you money to do these things, but that they come up with some of the funding to say, hey, we're also very interested in these projects, and we want to see them be successful past these one-time events. But that's just my personal.
Yeah, and I think it's a fair question. I think some of this, though, like when you look at Arts Beats and Eats, its geography is in our downtown, but like businesses from all over.
I was mostly speaking to like the back to school, the strolling dinner, and the pink drink, not Arts Beats and Eats. I can understand.
Yeah, and some of those, yeah. I mean, I got to look at the ones that would participate, like outside of our DDA, our central business district. But yeah, I mean, it's a fair question. I think there's been a lot that, the DDA has been working to cover from a capacity point of view. I think this would be something that we could just give ARPA money to the DDA and have them work it and say, hey, if you need money to do these sort of things, they could come in with the request and it would just be a pass-through, us giving it to the DDA, and then they spend it because they don't actually get ARPA funding. But I think that in this case, we're just the administrators. Yeah.
They have their own funding, right?
They have their own DDA funding, but they don't have their own ARPA funding.
Right. Yeah. But they have their own funding that will benefit their responsibilities. This is going to help them.
Mm-hmm.
We come in as co-partners, is what I'm saying. Like, when I worked in philanthropy, we would test a grant off of how many other funders that are in the proposal, because that shows that there is buy-in for these programs. And so that's all I was just trying to point out, that it doesn't seem like there is buy-in from these organizations if they're not willing to put something towards it.
Well, I'd say the restaurants, the majority of them in the downtown, 9-0 of the restaurant association supported it. And their buy-in is they're eating the difference between the $5 and $12, right? So at least on that program, the back to school one, the restaurants are putting skin in the game, because if someone shows up to your restaurant and presents this voucher, you're giving away a free kids meal that has a $12 value, maybe two, and then you're getting $5 in, reimbursement. So that they have skin in the game on that one. I think the strolling dinner is an interesting concept for branding and getting people back to the downtown. I think the pink drink one goes beyond just, there's a different sort of partnership there with the chamber and with sort of the philanthropic benefit that we're kind of bringing in. But yeah, I would say definitely on the back to school, they're putting some skin in the game on that one. Commissioner Douglas.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm hearing Commissioner Herzog say what I'm thinking. I will say the ARPA programs, which we have funded in the past with the booth reduction in costs for the restaurants and especially for the kids zone, which is really makes the event more family friendly. But the other three programs, they sound great. I love the kids program and the pink drink program. They would all be beneficial to the city, and yet I feel like it's July, right? And all of a sudden, these are kind of waltzing in the door for August, September, October. And to Commissioner Herzog's point, we don't have the DDA here advocating for it. We don't have a representative from the Restaurant Association here advocating for it. I just feel like this is, maybe the tail is wagging the dog a little bit. And and it's not so much the ARPA funding dollars as it is the fact that these decisions do not seem strategic as part of the DDA's management and the city's own promotional programs. And I'm just sort of inclined to kind of pull back on those three and wait, because I don't feel like this is fully thought out by the city and other agencies.
Commissioner Macy?
Yeah, so I don't disagree with what's being said about like the DDA. These are DDA relevant programs, and they should have some skin in the game. And but this is not the first time I feel like this has come up, that we've been like, boy, it would be nice if the DDA were doing this program, and we don't control the DDA, and the restaurants have struggled since COVID. And so during COVID times, there was money that was going into restaurants. There were programs that were helping to support their labor costs and their additional costs, helping them to do some construction while they were shut down. There was a lot of that. But that's dried up, and their problems aren't over with the end of COVID, and they've continued. And while I don't at all disagree with like, come on DDA, let's see it. I also feel like it's not out of the question for the city to be saying like, we also support and are interested in the investment in our restaurants. I also think that these are cool programs. Each one is not actually all that expensive. It's just when you sort of put them together, but it looks like a whole fall lineup of ways that we're going to be supporting our restaurants, and we've heard from them. We've heard from them that they, post-COVID, are having issues. We've heard from them about the employment issues. We've heard from them about parking, maybe once or twice. And, giving them some support seems appropriate to me. but granting exactly what you're saying, that I don't intend to do this every year, and if the DDA likes these programs and sees that the benefit that they have, then I expect them to be taking it over.
Yeah, and I'll just say I would just agree with Commissioner Macy, and if you look at it over the relationship of the DDA and the city over 20, 30 years, or since 1986, was it 88, 86? I can't remember when the DDA was formulated. There's been a lot of, we asked them to pay for the courthouse. Okay. There's a lot of mutual support that the two organizations give each other over the years, depending on, capacity and needs and, funding and things of that nature. And I look at this as being, less than a rounding error on the ARPA funding, and it will have a dramatic impact on local business and local families. I would say that families that are back to school that week, as we all know, it's a struggle, and having the ability to take your kids to go out to eat during that first week after Labor Day, during a very busy time when families are trying to get organized in their house, that's a tremendous benefit to families in Royal Oak that live outside the downtown. You know what I mean? If you have 2 kids, that's $24 in your pocket, and probably 3 hours of dishes, or I don't know. I mean, my house, it seems like it takes forever to get the kids to do dishes. But so I think there's significant benefit there. And then if we look at the strolling dinner, the impressions that we would get for Royal Oak and the DDA businesses, but also I think it's a experiment that the ARPA funds should be used for to support new concepts as a one-time expenditure. So it's a kind of an experiment, but it will have an immediate impact. And then I think the overall reflection of Royal Oak being a community supporting the pink drink in October, I think is huge. And that goes, now, whether we like it or not, the downtown is going to be the gravitas for events like that. And I think not only does it raise money, so you get double down for those institutions, you bring people together in a very positive way. And part of COVID is getting people out of their living rooms and back into the dining rooms, and having the reasons to do that and to remember the awesome community that we have, and also getting people to socialize and get out of their house is a community benefit that goes beyond the DDA. And so I don't see it, if this were, $4 million, I'd be like, yeah, there's a big challenge here. But I think with this, given the fact that it not only benefits downtown businesses, but it benefits the broader community, I think it's a venture well worth going down. Commissioner Douglas.
Just a question. Why would we not offer the back-to-school program to restaurants throughout the city? Why would we just limit it to downtown? I mean, a family might want to go to the Village Grill or the Oak Diner or the Coney up on Woodward.
I'll let Mr. Witz answer that question. I don't think there's a reason.
There is no reason we couldn't expand the program, and that can be part of the approval. In fact, it's better that it wouldn't be DDA supported if we did expand the restaurants to anyone who's willing to agree to the deal that is structured.
Yeah, we had a restaurant here earlier tonight. It's up on Woodward. And we hear from businesses elsewhere in the city that, where's the love? Here's some love.
I think that's a great idea, and I think that we're just biased because the Restaurant Association tends to be heavily dominated by downtown restaurants. But if there's no real restrictions why we couldn't, I'd say open it up to first come, first serve, any restaurant that wants to participate in the city.
And 100%, and that is a great idea that we should have had it structured that way, and it can easily be adjusted that way. And I just want to say several members of the Royal Oak Restaurant Association wanted to be here and speak in favor of this and could not. Liz, who was tied up working, Carrie, who was out of town, and Robin from O'Toole's, their senior leadership, all wanted to be here to speak in support. And we did have a major meeting about the pink drink and the restaurant program, as well as the pilot at the chamber offices with senior Restaurant Association leadership, and they are, I will just say, they are budget challenged as well. But I wanted to add that. Thank you for that idea, and please consider the program amended to that.
Commissioner Herzog.
I have 2 questions. Why was it the partnership for the pink drink is with the American Cancer Society? Is that correct?
Yes.
Or that's what And so why was that group chosen over like maybe something local or?
So again, too, that could also be adjusted or shared as well. So the genesis for that is that Michael Pessendorfer, who's the head of the chamber, has been hosting a Real Men Wear Pink event, and he's raised thousands of dollars at his house in Royal Oak. We've attended, that event, and he brought the idea to the Restaurant Association, and that's how that started. To me, collaboration is what makes these events great. The more if you have another organization, and I would also amend that program to support a couple others, because that's more databases, more email addresses, and more, ways that it's impact, the cause and the people that are, and they're a well-known organization. So I would just say that we would be open to bringing in a couple and could take recommendations on that.
And I think one other thing about it was you had Arts Beats and Eats kind of kicking off, the end of summer. Going into September, you have the other programs like the Back to School program. And then in October, you want to keep interest and build that interest every month.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that October is Breast Cancer
Awareness Month. That might be the
and
Cancer
Society. That's probably
I think that's from the American Cancer Society, but I wouldn't, as a, help assisting the orchestration of that, it wouldn't have to be limited if there was a worthwhile organization to share in the proceeds there.
And then my other question, you spoke a lot about impacts and all the different things that all the impacts that these programs are going to have on our community. Is there anyone that's going to be tracking these metrics or being able to actually evaluate these impacts so that later down, when this comes up again, we can say, actually, this might not work, or this did work way above Commissioner Herzog's expectations, and she has to buy a round of drinks or whatever. So
pink drinks.
Pink ones. So is there anyone doing that? I like to see that there are like metrics and someone evaluating them.
And our interim city manager would not know, but we have put together, and I hope you remember reviewing them, a very significant report on the ARPA funding for Arts Beats and Eats. It included the restaurant revenue, the economic impact it had, the number of people that use the inflatables. So in the same case, we would pledge as part of this commitment to have a recap, how many social media impressions there were, how many people bought a pink drink, what the impact to the restaurant was, what the donations were, how many kids attended the program, and again, returning all money otherwise. And then we could attach a survey to the restaurants, how many average people, use the Back to School, and were there other diners, we can create a program. And again, I think, and this is where Stephanie is a champion even beyond us, I think that we could even do better than we had planned on the recapping of these other programs as part of, approval here.
Commissioner Teasem?
Thank you. So I've been listening a lot tonight, and I appreciate the thoughtful conversation up here. And I think some of my concerns walking into this were, one, the known ARPA funding overages that we, are contending with for some of the other items that we've greenlighted, I don't know. And so that was one of my concerns. I'm hearing that might not be a huge issue because this is a small enough amount of money that it can be absorbed. I think one of my other concerns, and I think I still have a little bit of this, is that it's in between our finance director roles, and so Mr. Wallenweber talked about, things that we're not quite sure about at this time. So, that's still a little bit of concern for me, that just the timing of this coming forward when we don't have that position, really strongly in place right now. But I also appreciate having heard from the business owners that came here today to talk about their stories, and also comments from commissioners who've been here a little bit longer and have been able to hear more stories from some of our business owners that, as a newbie, I haven't heard as many of those. So I just want to be just express my gratitude for the conversation that we've had tonight at the dais. I also appreciate Commissioner Herzog's request for data. and looking at evaluation. I think evaluation is always a really good thing to just really get at, how effective are these programs? Some of the metrics you mentioned seem relevant. Some of the business owners' comments also talked about, bringing new customers in, these kind of, and so I wonder if there's a way that we can track that down the road, whether it's, longer term surveys with business owners. And I had one last point. I always lose them by the last point. Data. I guess I'll just leave it at that for now.
We'll come
Thank
back
you.
Anything from this side of the table?
Oh, I did remember.
Oh, we'll come right back to you.
Okay, I just bounced right off the wall. So the other thing, and just, because would there be, I guess this is a question, would there be an opportunity to do this again through ARPA? And if not, your discussion about foundations always want to have sustainability plans as well. So I think the data can be helpful for that, but maybe this is something that we do have some thought of, like what would that look like in the future, if it's partnerships with other organizations like the DDA or something else, to continue to support the businesses, and I think in particular the smaller businesses, moving forward.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I think the point about collecting the data is very good, and I think that will help determine what are the future funding source mechanisms after the ARPA money expires. Because if all of a sudden we find that, for business, it's free parking, does that drive people to come to oh, honey, it's free parking, let's go get something to eat? Or is it, hey, you know what, let's go out for a strolling dinner and, remind ourselves how awesome our community is? Or is it, hey, oh, it's an exhausting week, I can't believe we had 8 soccer practices, 2 football practices, and the kids started school, we're doing homework, let's just go out somewhere in Royal Oak to eat. And if you see that return, then I think that helps open up the doors to many grant opportunities, DDA, or even the city itself saying, hey, look, when it comes to helping small business, we have some experience and we have some data that says that, we're not guessing. But under the ARPA process, it's an educated guess, but it's a one-time cost. And if we can experiment and get some useful insights on that, then, we'll have that playbook for the future to determine, what parties want to get, in my opinion. Because it would be hard pressed to go to somebody and say, hey, do this thing. But now if you have data and evidence that says do this thing, it has a 8 times multiple on what you put into it. You go to the state of Michigan, you go to the, county economic development, whatever, there's sources. And they like to put money into things that actually work. So there's a good opportunity for us to try something a bit novel, definitely in our wheelhouse, and see what the returns are. Commissioner Macy.
I'm going to move approval.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Macy. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Hunt? Yes, Commissioner Hunt.
Is your motion with the amendment made by Commissioner Douglas to extend the restaurant, or back-to-school restaurant week to all Royal Oak restaurants?
It is indeed.
Okay, then second.
All right. Does anyone want to discuss this? We didn't really have any discussion on it.
Oh, yes.
Oh, Commissioner Douglas.
So if I probably should have moved forward to make the motion myself, because if the motion was for the kid zone and the restaurant, discounts for booths at Arts Beats and Eats, and the schools project, I would vote for that. But I'm going to have to vote against it because I feel like the strolling dinner and the pink drink thing are just not within our wheelhouse and inappropriate.
Anybody else? I'll just add, I'll be supporting it. I think that we have a responsibility here, especially after we accepted the $28 million, to put it to good use and to get the highest bang for our buck as a community. Our community includes the downtown, it includes our neighborhoods, it includes different pockets throughout the city. And while some of this is focused in the downtown and some of it is spread throughout the city, our downtown's a big economic player in the community. That's where a lot of the commerce happens in our community. I think we do have a responsibility to help our small businesses, even if, the DDA, is doing what they can do to help small businesses. I think that's the fabric of who we are as a community. That's what we identify with. We're so proud of our small business. And at the same time, if we can help some families out and kids out throughout the community, get them some free French fries and burgers or whatever they like these days, and take a load off the parents to come out and take their kids out to eat, create some opportunities for people to socialize and get back to the groove. Where so many folks have become more and more prisoners of their home since COVID. Every opportunity we have to bring people out and get that social health, I'm going to support. So, I'll be supporting it for those reasons. All right. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Okay. It passed. I think the dollar of funding per minute might be the lowest. No, I'm just kidding. All right. Mr. Witz, Ms. McIntyre, thank you. That brings us to item 9, which is the approval of the piano projects.
Yeah, Elena is the fellow from the University of Michigan Ford School in our office, and this is a project she's worked on, and so I'll let her make the presentation.
All right, the floor is yours.
Good evening, commissioners and mayor. So the Commission for the Arts has been running the piano project since 2016, and that is where a handful of pianos are painted by some lovely volunteers, and they are placed around the city for the public to play and enjoy. It creates a great opportunity for people to, out in the city, to engage the arts. What is different this year is that the city has entered into some formal agreements with the business owners, and these agreements are designed to improve the communication and paint a much clearer picture of what the business owners can expect out of participating in this program. These agreements enable everyone to be on the same page with regards to when the pianos are to be removed, how they can go about keeping the piano beyond the removal point if they so choose, and how they can go about reporting any damage if there is any. The pianos are they've been out since May 24th, and they will be out until November 1st. And that is all.
Questions? Commissioner Macy.
This is not really a question. But I just want to say this program has been a cool one. People like it. They really love to see those pianos. You hear the people plunking away. I think it's fun. Like, people play well, they play poorly, but it's enjoyable and fun around the community. And I just want to commend you or Susan, or I'm not sure who did this, Nick, but putting together this formalized agreement, I think after all these years is a good idea to kind of just make sure that everyone knows what's what. So I love that we have this, and I'm excited that all these pianos are out there. I have not seen them all yet, but I will make an effort to do so. So thank you. I'd like to move approval.
All right. We have a motion by Commissioner Macy. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Cheatham. Discussion. Anything we want to key in on?
No pun intended.
All right. I guess we'll be voting on our own accord. All right.
That's even better.
I'm done. I used all 3. Gosh darn it. Well, nice work. Great idea. And it may seem, everything comes to us in a package, but I can only imagine trying to wrangle a bunch of people to get everybody on the same page is a challenge. And so, welcome to governing. So.
And on that note.
Oh, man. That was a good one. That was probably the best one. That's worth 3. Give you 3 points on that.
Okay.
All right. Well, I'll call for the vote. All of those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. All right. Nice work. All right. Item 10. Approval of Royal Oak logo license agreement, policy, procedure, and application. Mr. Grachowski.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Commission. Attached for your consideration tonight is a proposed policy and procedure, application, and license and agreement that would enable third parties to use the city's trademarked and protected logo upon review and approval by the city. As you are well aware, the city has significant investment in its valuable trademarked intellectual property in the city's logo. And it's important we protect that intellectual property interest to avoid any possible misuse or perception of possible city approval by using the city's logo or misuse of the logo. The policy procedure application basically contemplates two different scenarios. It contemplates using the logo on print or media such as a web page or other digital content, or for use or display in a retail or other location. Secondly, the policy procedure application addresses circumstances where an entity would desire to maybe place a logo on a t-shirt or a coffee mug and sell that in their retail business, and thus also advertise the city's logo and get some exposure to the city in that manner. The proposed, as written, the proposed policy procedure sets forth evaluation criteria for the use of the city's logo, establishes an application procedure, and it contemplates review of city manager that would, if approved by the city manager, would execute the written license agreement. Should this commission desire to be the body that approves the use of the city logo, we can certainly amend that to reflect the desires of the commission if you want to be the approving body, with the added review and vetting, so to speak, by the city manager before even bringing it to the city commission for approval. The proposed license agreement is also attached for your consideration. There are alternate versions to choose from on that we would implement given the proper anticipated use of the city logo, whether it be printed media or use on items for sales. There would be an audit availability for the records of sales for items that the logo was printed on, so we could properly track that. We don't suspect that would create a lot of revenue for the city, but it would indeed create visibility of the city's logo if the commission were to approve it. So absent any questions, you have before you, I think, a long anticipated and requested policy procedure licensing agreement that I know this commission has been desirous of exploring for some time.
Yeah, and I want to tell you, I appreciate you. This is one of the things that has been on for a long time, and getting it over the edge here has been a challenge because, we've had a lot of things going on. But this not only is, this isn't a financial play for the city, so everybody is aware. This is so people have been asking all over for Royal Oak swag. Hats, shirts, coats. They're proud of their community. They want to wear their stuff, but there's no vehicle for them to get what they want. We made some hats under like a few hundred hats or something like that as a city. We had Nick down picking out the hats with Judy, and he's like, I'm a lawyer. I'm like, but do you wear hats? I mean, you wear hats, don't you? And he's like, but that was only because we wanted to kind of experiment with it, but also we have limitations on what we can do. And this is really something that, retailers in our downtown can fully take advantage. I think of folks selling coffee mugs, stationery, t-shirts, you name it. And so I think this really connects people that want the stuff with people that can actually execute at the volume that we're looking at. But I do have two questions. One is, when it says, I just lost my place here, the direct language. Describe proposed use of the mark. Are we requiring like a rendering or photo? Because I would want to be a little restrictive if someone's using it for something really hyper inappropriate, you know, putting swastikas on it or something like that. Like, yeah, that's a no. You know what I mean? Do we have like the ability to even look at that sort of stuff? Because it's different, because this is a trademark versus, you know, a sign that we're approving or not approving.
And bear with me 1 minute, I'm looking. I thought we had something in there about that. We can certainly add, Mr. Mayor, if the commission so desires, an example. I mean, I think a description might, in some circumstances, work. But otherwise, if we needed an example of a rendering or a mock-up of what the proposed use might be, that certainly wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility to make them provide that to us, whether it be, and again, you know, uses vary, so that rendering would be vary as well, but I can certainly look at adding that. I thought we had something in there, but.
It's in here. It's item.
Well, thank you.
6.
It's been a while since I
Quality
reviewed
control.
this. and-
Item 6, yeah, quality control. Licensee shall furnish to the
Yes.
city, blah, blah, blah.
Correct. Copies of the version.
Copies of the version of the advertising and promotional materials to be disseminated, displayed, or otherwise utilized.
But that's a question, does that come before or after approval?
Oh, well before. We wouldn't approve it until we saw that.
Okay.
render. That's
All right.
part of the approval process and the quality control.
Gotcha. I thought it was like, okay, you've been approved, now part of that contract, you have to provide these.
No, that all comes well before that. That's part of the agreement that they have to provide it ahead of time to get the approval.
And now I see termination here, and it's getting a little later for me in my brain. City may terminate this agreement forthwith by delivery of a written notice of termination at any time thereafter before such breach or default has been cured. So does that mean we have a termination for convenience, or is it only breach and default that we can?
Well, if you look at the number 9, we were anticipating placing a term in the use of the logo. So that would, number 1, limit how long.
So you wouldn't do like a 30-year term, you'd do like, hey, we'll do
Exactly.
it for a year, see how it goes.
And obviously, it sounds like, at least from some of these questions, that this might be something that would maybe come to you after vetting through the city manager's office for all these qualifications, just maybe on a consent agenda type thing, so you're aware of what's being approved and what's not being approved. But we would limit the term. That paragraph 10 just mentions breach or default, so that doesn't necessarily give us termination for convenience. If you wanted to add that, I would certainly do that as well.
Yeah, the only issue that the businesses may have is like, I had to buy 1,000 t-shirts and I got all my logos on there. So if there's a way to, yeah, I mean, I think if you do the duration and we see an abuse, then we just have to update the licensing agreement for that abuse. Like,
Well,
you're not going to be able to find figure out everything ahead of time. It's just if we have a few options to control the unknown bad behavior that we just don't know.
And that's
You know what I mean?
breach. Under
Yeah.
this agreement and the application and the policy procedure, misuse of that or unapproved use of the logo in any way results in breach and default and
Yeah,
would
okay.
allow us to terminate.
Yeah,
That would be a for cause.
And a breach would be like, oh, I'm going to put the Royal Oak logo. They describe it or whatever, and then in the actual production, it's something really offensive. Then we can say that's not what you described, and that's not what was in your uploaded, not even close to what was in your uploaded image. Therefore, you're in default. We terminate.
And
okay, I'm okay with that.
As we need to legally if we have to.
All right, I don't want to make it more complicated. I mean, I think that's
Oh.
sufficient to, you're not going to have a coat of armor, but a little bit of chainmail is just fine. Commissioner Hahn.
Kind of piggybacking what you just stated, Nick. So the use policy discusses, it mentions the statute of what happens if you abuse the logo and the trademark by, prosecution and all, but it doesn't, the document itself doesn't necessarily speak on what happens if someone doesn't even go through this process, if they just utilize our logo without applying for it? So there's always the opportunity, of course, to prosecute, but what are the steps that the city would take in that event? And should that be a part of this process?
And you're absolutely right, and you may recall, I was before my time, but at a point in time where we discovered our logo was misused, we were sending letters, cease and desist type of things. That's our available remedy. As a matter of fact, it was just brought to my attention, a local new business that just opened recently had put up a Royal Oak logo in the store, a smaller one, maybe a beach ball size logo, and luckily in that case, a call to their attorney got that removed quite readily. But, so there's all sorts of options, from trying the easy approach first, saying, well, you need approval for this, you can't have that up, or you can't do that, to the letters and potential litigation if we had to.
So are those processes that should be included in our use policy, since it's being used without proper approvals?
I mean, I can add that in there. I didn't think that, the policy is designed for people who want to properly go through the process, be vetted, and use it, whereas those who don't, we have our other available options and remedies, so I didn't necessarily think it was important to put that in here. I can probably come up with some language that would certainly add that if that's the desire of the board.
Well, I'm just curious for city guidance, for those on, in administration, what happens when you're not there, Mark's not there, and then this comes before them? Like, what remedies do they have? What issues can they bring
There
forward?
might have been some previous legal opinions and other discussions you had as a commission about invalid uses of the logo, so I may have to look back at that, but if you think that's a good idea, I'm certainly happy to add that. It's just a couple of sentences that should explain that outside of this, it's prohibited, and we'll pursue any and all legal available remedies to cease unlawful use of the city's trademark logo.
I'll just add to what Commissioner Hunt's saying. I think it's helpful in there because anybody that is looking at the license agreement and they balk at the 5% and they think they can get away with it, now they know, they've been informed what the process is, and so therefore they'd be, not try to run a underground operation, or at least we've told them, if you run an underground operation, it might be helpful to have that all in the agreement, because if they sign one and then they want to do another t-shirt and they just don't want to go through this process, then they have to understand, look, we're going to help. This is a good thing for everybody, but if you break the rules, there's consequences.
And our damages are set by law as far as trademark law is concerned, of what we can recover for unauthorized use of our trademark logo. So, but I can certainly add some language to that. I don't think that'll be a problem. Happy to do it.
And in the agreement itself, number 7, I'm just trying to be clear, are we picking one or the other, or is that an opportunity that the applicant can choose?
No, I think that would be up to the city.
Okay.
It would depend on the type of use proposed. There might be a charity, for instance, that wants to partner with the city and use their logo in collaboration with our logo to promote a charitable event, and maybe you would not necessarily want a royalty for something such as that. So that's what that envisions. But that would be for the city to choose those options.
Thank you.
Commissioner Macy?
Thank you. So both the things that I was going to say have already been mentioned at this table, but I just want to say that I agree because, so Mayor, you were saying that terminating for convenience, and then you sort of like, oh, maybe you don't need it. I actually would like that. I think it makes sense to have that in this case. I don't think the city would do it willy-nilly, but I kind of want to have the option that I don't have to look for a legal reason to snatch back our logo if someone's using it in a way that we didn't realize when we first saw it. So that, I was going to say the same thing.
I love the termination for convenience if you guys are on board.
So I'm on board, but I don't know about the rest of my colleagues. And then Mr. Grochowski said about the approval, like it could come to the commission, but I liked what the idea that you had about it goes to the city manager, but then it shows up in consent agenda. And then if we, so because in this, it says only like appeals come to us, but the approvals just go through. And I'd like to see even the approvals before they're, even if it's just on consent agenda. That would be my preference.
And I'll obviously, along with city manager, be a part of that for the legal purposes. So we're checking all the boxes, but that was kind of my thought, was have an initial vetting, and I'll have to make those changes accordingly, because right now it just envisions city manager being the final decision maker, but you should know, you should be the final say of what's approved and not approved. There might be instances where something's vetted and it's just not appropriate and it doesn't even come to you, and that's the end of the story. So I will add that.
Is that it?
What's that, sorry?
I got Commissioner Cheatham and then Commissioner Douglas.
This is actually going on an earlier topic, but I'm not sure what termination for convenience means, but one situation I was envisioning was down the road someday we might change our branding, and so like what happens at that point for previous approvals? So if we change our logo,
We'd
in
still
20
own
years.
this intellectual property.
What, say that again?
We would still own this intellectual property.
Right, but we would probably not want other vendors or other entities to continue using our older branding, right? Like on new things.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point. Like, you'd want to have some control to say, hey, we have a new city logo, quit perpetuating the old one.
Yeah.
But I would think in that process, we would do it more than terminate for convenience, but we
Yeah,
would,
so I don't know
yeah.
what the mechanism is at that point, and I would imagine we would have some good lead-in time to warn businesses about that, as we're in a development phase. But, again, I love our branding, but I think at some point it will be dated in 50 years, 60 years.
100 years.
150 years.
Commissioner Douglas?
So I've just been doing some sort of back of the envelope calculations on royalties. And if somebody sold $10,000 worth of stuff, the royalty that we get would be $1,250. Am I doing my math right? No, if somebody sold $25,000, our royalties would be $1,250, which is like maybe 3 hours of Mr. Grochowski's time, not to mention the staff time spent going over the demanding to get their reports and going over their reports. So I would make a case, not a strong case, but raise the idea of foregoing the licensing fee completely. That is, looking at staff time as a cost here. Similarly, I raise the idea of charging an application fee. And perhaps waiving that for nonprofits, but some sort of flat fee, just to kind of, set a threshold for people to use our branded logo. And then third thing, not really part of this agreement, but in another part of the city, I would think we would want to allow our grant writers, our granting department, to include in their boilerplate authorization for grantors to use our logo in their materials, promoting the fact that they have contributed to the city.
Yeah, I think there's, so good thoughts. I would say my opinion on those is I think an application fee might be worth it. If we get a lot of applications, maybe we consider that just to keep the, you charge $2 admission, it keeps the serious people coming. You know what I mean? Not anything but like $5, $10, something to keep people honest. I don't have an issue. There's a cost to process that and manage that and take that fee and all that stuff. So it has to be looked at, and maybe the clerk or the city attorney's like, that's too painful, but if it's easy to do, great. I think the not charging anything, I do think that having the fee also has people that are going to be serious about it, that they have to pay an inventory, and then we get to see the true value of what our logo is worth. And even though the approval process may not take a lot of time from the city attorney's office, when somebody does violate, then that's when the real hours kick in. And that's why you want to have that money coming in so we can hire a third-party attorney to fight on our behalf if there is a misuse. So I like keeping the 5% to keep the 1% of the people that will abuse it, That's my thought on that.
I have no strong feelings, I just thought I'd raise the thought.
I think from our perspective, an application fee as opposed to a royalty fee is a lot easier to manage from a city perspective. We're not having to track or do audits of their sales records to keep them honest as far as the royalty payments. And again, it's not about the generation of money from the royalty payments. But if there's some combination you want to explore, we can do that.
But Mr. Grochowski, I would also argue too that it's not an automatic audit, is it?
No,
it's
would
like
only
it's
be-
like filing your sales tax returns, right? It's 6%. You know, the state says how much did you sell? Fill out your worksheet and submit it. And if it's suspect, then they come and say, we need to look into your system, and you know you're skimping here. You're collecting sales tax and not remitting it. But in this case, we would only audit if anything was out of the ordinary, correct?
That would be the anticipated process, yes.
And the reality is we're not a business. We're not trying to capture every penny. What we're trying to do is get our logo out there in the hands of people that can do the best with it, or that want to show their civic pride. Like this. Those will sell. Commissioner Macy.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I'm not sure about this, but it seems like if we don't ask for a royalty, and then our only remedies would be to cease and desist, and they've already sold 10,000, and there's nothing that says we were going to take royalties to begin with, like doesn't it reduce our damages if we are?
And unfortunately, I'm not a trademark attorney, so I know trademark law speaks to what damages are allowed. They're pretty significant from what I understand, but I'm very limited in my knowledge on that. I mean, this was interesting coming up.
I did not take trademarks. I did take copyright,
Me
but I
neither.
remember nothing.
So, good question. Certainly one I want to look into and make sure that we're covered, but I'm pretty sure that I don't think that probably matters, but I don't want to misspeak.
Okay. All right, so it sounds like we've given some feedback. Do I need to move something?
And typically I'll say, and I don't have the answer on trademarks per se, I'm just going based on past business experience, being part of some discussions related to this. I'll leave it at that. But typically, the unauthorized use of a trademark or any intellectual property, from what I garner, is a typical formula that says, okay, what did the violating party profit? And you get to keep all their profits. So if they went out and sold 1 million t-shirts, and it wouldn't be the 5% you get back. If they made 40% on those t-shirts, you would get $400,000. I can't say that for sure in this type of arrangement, but in other business dynamics I've been involved in, that was one of the things my lawyers taught me. Not that I was on the good side. Just want to be clear.
Sure. Okay, that makes sense to me. Although it seems to me like there could be a case where someone uses our logo and, they didn't ask, and yet we don't maybe want to take all of their profits, but we do want to go after them. And so maybe it just seems to me, my point is I'd like to leave the royalties in there. I don't see a strong reason to remove them. But I was trying to ask, Mayor, do you need a motion here? Because now we've given some feedback. Is he going to bring it back? Or?
Yeah, so that's a question for the city attorney. Is there enough here to make minor modifications, or are they serious enough changes that would require another evaluation, or do you feel in your as a juror as opposed to a city attorney? How do you?
I've taken copious notes, and I generally go back and watch the video and make sure I get it right. I'm confident I can make the changes, but if you'd rather have like a copy of the updated one for your approval, I can bring it back at another meeting.
Maybe put it on consent next time, and we can
Sure.
look at it on Thursday, read it, and if any of us have any issues that don't seem to meet the discussion we had here tonight, then we can pull it off. And
the only one thing I'm a little bit hesitant on direct. So it's sounding like we're gonna stick with the licensing fee or the royalty fee, but then there was talk of an application fee. Is that in addition to the licensing fee or the royalty fee? As, and,
Yeah, I would think so.
Okay, I'm seeing a lot of nods. I just want to make sure I'm clear in that direction, and that was my only kind of question mark and everything, so.
Yeah, a very nominal, just to keep people honest in terms of like, you know, you might get online people from anywhere in the world trying to go to Amazon and sell things online and then doing, you know what I mean? And so if like a local person can run a card or drop off a check or something, it keeps it local first.
Yeah.
So I'll make changes and put it back on the agenda, on a consent agenda, with your approval. That sounds like a good direction.
All right. So that brings us to item 11. Mr. Gachowski, proposed ordinance amendment, residential rental regulations, second reading.
Thank you, Mayor. This is second reading of the draft amendment for the rental regulations, including short-term and trying to address some of the short-term rental concerns that have been expressed. You can see from the draft that the original proposed amendment is in green, and then the red changes reflected in red are the changes between first and second reading. Just one clarification, inspections, the ability for the city to inspect is still in there. It was just reorganized a touch for purposes of properly numbering, lettering, organizing the ordinance. So there was a misstatement at public comment about that being removed. That was not removed. And I believe that met with the approval of the commission previously. So that is still in there. That has not changed. There is no red, there's no red changes to that particular section. So based on the commission feedback last time, I made all the changes that were requested in that ordinance, and I think right now we've got a pretty good version that does address all the requested revisions as envisioned by the commission's comments at last meeting.
So just a quick, we had a couple few questions from public comment I want to make sure we get to. You talked about the first question, but like renting to a third party who rents to an Airbnb, that's not a legitimate loophole. That's
I'm not gonna.
That's fraud.
Well, and so you're talking about if I rent, like lease a home for a year and then turn around and re-rent it as an Airbnb is what you're talking about.
Yeah, you still have to follow the ordinance or I mean, there's
You
still
do,
consequences
correct.
and
Correct.
it's
The
not a
ordinance-
loophole to do what you want.
The ordinance still applies 100% whoever is renting out that property. And I don't think it's appropriate for the city to get involved between the initial lease of the longer term lease where the short term lease wouldn't apply. But if the lessee turns around and leases it out as an Airbnb or rents it out on a short term basis, then yes, this would apply. It also does apply to all rentals within the city. So even the original landlord leasing it to the first person would have to comply with certain aspects of this ordinance, register it as rental, and then the renter would have to then register it as a rental as well.
And that's a civil issue, commercial issue, and their leases and all of that, and they can kick
That's
them out,
between
evict
them,
them,
that's
and
a
do whatever.
private lease agreement between them. If the landlord allows the renter to re-rent it as an Airbnb, that's a civil matter between them that I'm not sure we as a city would get involved other than regulating from a rental perspective both of those rentals and having them registered both.
But the question could be is like, oh, I have someone renting this place, they did the Airbnb, and then they get dinged and kicked out, and then a new person comes in and rents the place and does the same thing. Could you potentially have a cycle of bad renters? You know what I mean? Like the owner, not that anyone would go create this criminal enterprise, but you would have the owner of the property saying, basically, I'm going to rent it to my son, I'm going to rent it to this, and basically, as long as I can create a lease, even though no one lives there, I can put it in someone else's name, and then they can go do the Airbnb thing. Now, the fallacy in that argument is that there's criminal, so I guess if you want to put yourself up there for criminal prosecution for good old Uncle Larry, I'm sure you could do that, but I mean, because of the criminal nature of this, I wouldn't see like a farming operation where you just keep cycling new tenants in to do this once the old tenant got criminally prosecuted.
And that would fall under basically creating a nuisance on the property if it created 3 or more ordinance violations within the rental period, the original rental period.
Yeah.
So that
Then it
would
doesn't
then-
matter who's staying, who's renting it, the property cannot be rented.
Correct. We would not issue a rental license further if they were deemed a nuisance and revoked. Then they couldn't just re-rent it out to somebody else to avoid that because it's still considered a nuisance at that property. So it attaches to the property, at least the way this is currently drafted.
And then 2 more questions. One, the severity based on crime was kind of the question. Like, so if all of a sudden somebody had an Airbnb and a murder scene broke out, I don't know that Airbnbs are rented, hey, come do your murder here. I mean, I don't know if that's a market. Maybe I'm just out of touch. But let's say that that was the case. Then, you know, you get 3 murders and you're out? Or is it, you know, I'm trying to use an extreme case here to highlight the question, not trying to be insulted to the person that asked it, but I mean, maybe by highlighting an extreme, we can kind of understand how that would work.
Well, it's an interesting scenario. You know, obviously that's against the law and that would be a prohibited violation of the state or local laws under our current version of this. But the way you put it, it almost sounds like, and based on the way this is drafted, they might get 3 cracks at that.
And here's the
I'm not
thing.
sure how to address that. The wheels are turning to try to figure out how to specifically figure out a way to make that situation addressable in the ordinance, and I'm not sure how. I haven't thought about it much, so.
Yeah. Well, and I think what it comes down to is things can happen in any rental, right? Like things can happen in any owner-occupied property too. And so the question is, are people, you know, if the owner rents an Airbnb and it was used in a crime, then that's a ding. And, you know, 2 more dings, they're done. And so the Airbnb rent, or the landlord has no incentive to rent it to anybody that's going to violate the law. That's clear in this. But on the odd circumstance that, you know, they rent to somebody that commits a crime at the property, you know, that's unfortunate. And if they're a good landlord and it's just 1 in a million happenstance that a guy got into an argument with his girlfriend and there was a domestic situation, people were brought out in cuffs. I mean, that can happen, you know what I mean, anywhere, but that's not necessarily because of a bad landlord. That's because, you know, that happens in owner-occupied homes and all of that. So
I agree. It could happen anywhere at any time.
But you still only get 3 strikes in that case.
Correct, and that's why we revisited the graduated violation section at the end where I took into account the commission's concerns about the first violation maybe not having enough teeth, so we increased that to 200. And then we took out there was 4 violations that before we changed this, so now there's only 3. And the 3rd one is a misdemeanor.
And then if you don't actually get a license, you know, then it was suggested like, well, there's no penalty if you don't follow the rules. Well, no. I mean, if you get caught, there's penalties.
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah. And again, those are progressive. Like if they get caught the first time, it'll be the 200 register. And if they don't register, obviously we pay attention to make sure that it's no longer used as an illegal rental because they're not registered. And then obviously that's on the radar to monitor, and if they're discovered to still be in violation, we would progressively move forward with our remedies under this.
Okay. All right, sorry, I just wanted to make sure those questions were addressed because they were thoughtful and brought to the City Commission, and I wanted to make sure they were discussed. Sorry. We'll go Commissioner Macy.
So I'm going to follow up on the first one that I think Mr. Gruchowski already mentioned. So the inspection, so you said, you know, just got rearranged, it's in here. So after that public comment, I thought the same thing, and I went through and tried to find the section, and I actually can't find where it says that an inspection is required.
8. Section 8.
So it says they can go in at any time, but it doesn't say that in order to get this, you have to have an inspection before you get registered, or that you have to
Correct.
have one regularly every 2 years or whatever. So this just says the city official, code official can go in at any time to inspect, but not that an inspection is a required part of getting.
Correct, and if you recall, we discussed this previously some time ago, putting that burden on the inspection, the code enforcement department. They don't currently do interior inspections of current rental registrations. They're resistant to opening the door, pun intended, to rental inspections. Usually it's more complaint driven or driven by things that would otherwise make the code official think, well, we need to get in and inspect because there's a problem. For instance, we had a situation where we discovered an Airbnb was renting out a bedroom in a basement without a proper egress window, which is in violation. So in that situation, when it's brought to our attention, if we wanted to go in and inspect and verify, we could do that, but it's not, it never was a part of the ordinance, and it wasn't contemplated to be part of this ordinance because of the burdens it would place on the inspection department. If this commission is so desires to change that, that'll certainly can be looked at to change, but that will require added positions within the inspection department because there's a lot of, not just short-term rentals, but condos, rentals, apartment rentals. If you're gonna do it equally for all rentals, whether it's short-term, long-term, you're gonna inspect every single rental. Some cities do that, some cities don't.
Okay, well, I just wanted to be clear because I understood by your initial answer that it had not, like, oh, no, that's still in here, it's just moved around, but in fact, it is not. What you're telling me is that inspections are not required as part of this, and you're saying there's
Correct.
a reason, and I do vaguely remember this conversation.
Right.
But, I mean, I do see in here, struck out in green, that they were supposed to be inspected biannually, so that was at some.
And that initially was, they would drive by the house, make sure it appeared proper from the outside, and
So that was an exterior inspection.
That's
So,
all that was.
I mean, I think.
I
I'm
can
not-
add something to that effect back in. That's not a problem.
So, I mean, I don't want building code enforcement to come yell at me, but it does seem odd that we're tightening it up in a lot of ways, and yet an inspection of the location is not one of those ways.
And then that begs the question, what are you inspecting for? How far do you take that inspection? And cities struggle with that. Like, what is suitable to pass your inspection? Like, what type of, safety equipment? There's a plethora of different things that need to be considered. So if we go down that road, and I'm not saying I'm opposed to it, we would definitely have to table this and really explore that if you wanted to condition the issuance of a license upon an interior inspection. We definitely need to work on this a little more.
I'm not necessarily saying we want to do this, but we do in fact list some things here that are required,
Correct.
like a fire extinguisher on every floor and carbon monoxide detector and things like that, and yet we don't ever check that they're there unless someone comes and says, by the way, I don't have a carbon monoxide detector. So
Right.
it seems odd to me.
And we do, as a way to try to remedy some of that you just mentioned about the smoke detectors and fire extinguishers, we're requiring a sworn attestation that they are basically swearing under oath that they have this safety equipment installed and that they're not in violation of any other building codes. Like if they built a bedroom in the basement, there's proper egress and it was properly permitted. That was my way of trying to ensure that, I mean, of course, people may not be honest in that, but it was one way to try to remedy what you're talking about, because I don't necessarily disagree with that.
Yeah, I'll just add, I think if I remember this conversation we had correctly, I mean, the burden is huge. And if you get the sworn, you said a testament or affidavit or whatever it is, I think one, people want to be honest brokers, and two, if they don't, okay, I know that these short-term rental organizations require also that you have these things in place, and you can be kicked off the platform if you don't. And I'd say number three, usually what happens is when just like regular code enforcement, we're not inspecting people's properties. We don't go through the 25,000 dwellings and say, okay, that person's fence is off, this is this. It's usually all nuisance or complaint driven. So we tackle the priorities. And so if there's a priority short-term rental in a neighborhood because it's becoming a problem or people are complaining about it, now you have these toolkits. You have the signed affidavit, you have the ability, we can inspect anytime we want, right? Like we can come in and
Well,
inspect.
reasonable business hours.
Reasonable
It's
business
not
hours,
in
but
the
I
middle
mean,
of it, yeah.
one day after or 1 year after, if we get calls to say, hey, this people don't have an egress, they don't whatever, okay, well, we'll go send somebody over there to inspect. I think you're gonna find that it probably wouldn't be, you're just gonna bring out a bunch of overhead, and I don't know that you'd get the most of it. Like, we could put a cop in every corner and issue tickets all day for everyone going 5 over. But, you put them in place and they sit out and they audit drivers when they sit out and they give tickets and it keeps people honest. And I think that's kind of the approach here. If it really gets out of control and we do find problems, then I think we could move down that path. But I think out of the gate, because it's a living, breathing thing, I don't think you want to go down that out of the gate of inspecting every property. That'd be a huge undertaking in itself. I think what we want to do with this ordinance, the way it's written now, is quickly get out there and stop the problems. And that's level one. And then after we stop the problems, if it makes sense to do mandatory inspections on all rental properties in the city, I think we could look at that. But I think that's just going to delay all of this going into place, my opinion. Commissioner Douglas.
I'm not sure if the mayor's earlier questions or Mr. Grachowski's response answered the issue that was raised by one of the people in the audience, and that is, what if there is an unlicensed rental that we discover? How do we penalize that?
So again, I think we did discuss that earlier. It's the first offense is a civil infraction, $200 fine. But then that places it on our radar for making sure that if it's continued to be rented out, that we monitor that property for compliance. They are obviously told, you have to register this. Please come in and register. And if you don't, there's going to be penalties. And the expectation is they come in and register it. If they don't, then there's things that we can do to monitor to determine if it's still being rented, and then after the third violation, it would become a misdemeanor and much more significant.
So how much time do they have to register it? At what time does the second?
Well, technically, before they rent it again.
Well, but this applies to long-term rentals also.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
So if I'm renting this property and you find out that I'm got a tenant in there and I don't do anything about it, when do you come back to me and say, oh, I see you still have that tenant, second strike?
And that's not in here. Not sure if there's a policy or procedure in place with our current code that would address something like that. Generally, code enforcement will give them a warning, and then they tickle it in the BSNA system to come back within 2 weeks to check, and if they haven't, they get another warning and then maybe a ticket. So there are warnings previous to tickets with the hope of compliance. Obviously, that's the goal, is just comply and register it. So they do, as a matter of course, give those notices and warnings and revisit those. BSNA gives them notices to come back, but I'm not familiar with the complete process that they're engaged in there.
So is this ordinance tied to that department's general functions?
Yes.
Okay.
So just to clarify that, so if you're not following this, it triggers the ordinance that's already in place that we have for rentals in the city today that says.
Correct.
And there's a process that says, hey, if you don't, and then it goes to court, and then you get
Correct. Like
prosecuted.
right now, if we discovered a rental that wasn't registered, they'd be issued, supposedly be issued a warning. If they failed to register it, they'd eventually be issued a ticket and have to appear in district court. Even on a civil infraction, they'd still have to appear because those aren't necessarily just payable civil infractions. They treat those as having to come see the city attorney to determine. And generally, when they come and see us on that, the first question is it registered yet?
But I think if I'm not mistaken, and I could be completely wrong on this, but my understanding, going back, digging way back in the archive, is that on that ticket, there is a demand to pay the fine, but also remedy the situation within 90 days, 60 days, 30 days, something like that, to register and pay the fine or whatever it is. And if they don't, then there is I thought there was a timestamp on there, but I could be on the actual ticket.
I'm pretty sure there's a day to respond to go to court. Like
Yeah.
you're required to, on code enforcement, generally it's not just a payable civil infraction like a parking ticket or a speeding ticket. It actually requires an appearance for the purpose of discussing with the prosecutor the fact that, and code enforcement appears at that hearing with the prosecutor to make sure that there's compliance. So we work through that often with a lot of various code violations, whether it be blight or something else, which can be civil infractions as well.
So I'm sorry, to be clear, so, person X is, renting this place out, the building department comes out, they may first give them a letter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they may give them another letter, and after that, and I understand, we're not trying to penalize people, we're trying to bring compliance.
Mm-hmm.
So the third time, then they get so that's when they get their first fine.
Well, ticket, which includes a fine of up to $200 plus a mandatory court appearance.
Okay, and okay, I understand now, thank you.
Commissioner Macy.
Okay, so I think it says here that if you don't apply for your license, you're charged a late charge of $1 per day per dwelling unit. And that's on all payments received after the due date, which is 30 days after the expiration or 30 days after meeting the initial registration requirements. So there should be $1 a day that is accruing in addition to the, fee. And if the owner fails to pay the city as provided within 30 days, this is existing language.
Mm-hmm.
The city shall have a lien on the property for all unpaid fees and charges that they could enforce the way we enforce other such liens, like on our tax liens. So I think there is, right? That was existing, like not additional.
That was existing. As a matter of fact, very early on in my tenure, there were, I think, 3 different condo buildings in the city that were all rentals. And they failed to register, and they were late, and there was thousands of dollars that were needed to be paid to get them pursuant to that section to get them caught up. So we have used that as a mechanism to garner compliance, but their code enforcement does charge that all the time.
And if I may build on that point, that doesn't change the fact that even though they don't have a rental, even though they haven't registered their rental, we still can enforce the short-term rental. So if there is a nuisance or there are issues, we can still issue. It's not like, oh, I'm not going to register it and therefore I can circumvent the ordinance that's in front of us. It's this ordinance, whether you're registered or not, this ordinance is in place and we will enforce it. And you just have double problems now because you're not registered. Correct?
Correct.
I understand. Okay.
Cool.
Ist gut.
See?
Okay. So what now? We've talked a lot. Now my brain's fried.
There's a proposed motion if that's the desire of the commission. And that motion includes I assume you looked at the good neighbor policy, which would be included. When somebody comes in and applies and they're issued a license, they're given that and told that they need to provide that to the renters so they're aware to be good neighbors.
Can I ask
Can I just ask a question about the good neighbor policy? Something I just picked up on when I was rereading it now, but it talks about parking in front of the house that you are renting, and it makes it sound like you can only park, like if you first use off-street parking, but if then you are using on-street parking, I feel like the good neighbor, what's it called, good neighbor document, good neighbor policy is making it sound like you could only then park in front of the house that you're renting. And I understand that that would be, you know, the first choice, but I feel like that could be a little bit confusing.
Certainly make a revision to that and clarify that.
Like
when
where possible,
available.
yeah, when available, yeah, that's all it,
It
yeah.
might
If
just,
someone's having a party on the block, you might be forced to park way down the street.
of course, and,
Yeah.
and that wasn't the intent.
No, no,
as
I know,
you
and it was
know,
just like-
On-street parking is just that, it's free parking for anybody that, or unless it's metered, but it is available to anybody, first come, first serve. It's just respectful to try to park in front of. So I can certainly make that change.
I would say as close to the property as possible. Okay. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Macy.
All right, I don't need to keep beating this, but actually I disagree. I think it is sort of, it says, if street parking is available, please engage in good neighbor practices by parking in front of your vacation home, blah, 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 be mindful. So it doesn't sound to me like it's required, but also I will say this, I think that if someone parks in front of, like, you can call the cops and say, this car's been parked there for 24 hours and they'll come ticket it. So, right? Isn't that an
Well, they tag it, and it's a 48-hour tag, and if it's not moved within 48 hours, then it can be towed pursuant to state law.
So it may not be required, but kind of it is to park in front of your own property. So, in other words, I don't think it says you have to park in there, but I also think that we don't want to be saying you can just leave your cars in front of your neighbors. I think we need to be careful that, like, oh, just park wherever you want for however long you want, because actually we do have an ordinance in effect that doesn't allow you to park indefinitely in front of someone else's house.
Or your own.
Or your own, but like, people are less likely to call on you.
And that's a state law provision for abandoned vehicles, because
Yeah.
that does happen, but that's the applicable provisions that you're referring to about, you know, not using it as a storage space for your vehicle that you maybe never drive. That would be an abandoned vehicle under the law and could be towed if it's not moved within 48 hours.
Yeah.
So maybe if you're going to clarify, as Commissioner Chisholm suggested, that like you can park other places, maybe note that, you know, you can't store your car on the, so maybe make like a double.
Right, and if it's a short-term rental, the longest it's gonna be there if they never leave the house for anything is a week, probably. If,
Yeah.
or maybe 30 days, I guess you could do an Airbnb for longer than a week, but that's their typical. But given that's the policy, we can change that at will. We don't need a, yeah, we can change it as we go. So I'll take a look at that and see if I can clean that up a little bit.
Any other questions? Commissioner Douglas.
I move approval of the resolution as submitted.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Douglas. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Herzog. All right. Discussion? All right, no additional discussion. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. All right. That brings us to item 12 tonight.
I move we adjourn.
We have motion enthusiastically by Commissioner Douglas. Is there a second? A extra enthusiastic second by Commissioner Chisholm.
The business of the people having been.
We used to do that. Any discussion? I'll just say on adjournments moving forward, let's have some fun. Back in the day, Commissioner Marley, I mean, we'd have the best ones.
Yeah.
All right? All right, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Adjourned.
Mayor wins 3-2.
All right.